Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop. Guys, I think there is one thing that the Hearthstone team is deliberately ignoring. Over the last 10 years, the power of cards and effects has increased significantly, while hero abilities have remained the same. I always felt that hero powers were weak, but now against the background of powerful card effects, they have become completely useless and too expensive. In the vast majority of cases, players are forced to use hero powers only if they have no other alternatives. In duels and the new twist format, everything is completely different. Hero powers are much stronger and they are a great alternative to using cards. In situations where a hero power matches its cost and is proportionate in power to the cards in the deck, it becomes an integral component of turn planning. I want you to measure the power of classic hero abilities using your benchmark and determine the worst ones, as well as determine how powerful they are compared to the current level of effect power.
Great idea Dora. Analyzing the hero's abilities will allow us to go back in time and clarify many of the nuances in the original approach to balancing effects.
It is worth admitting that hero powers do look weak, but it is not that the developers completely ignore them. The Hearthstone team creates conditions in which hero abilities receive special advantages within certain strategies. For example, Ping Mage, Odin Warrior, Totem Shaman, Silverhand Paladin, and so on. But in this video, we are interested in studying hero powers in a vacuum, without taking into account additional synergies and mechanics within each class.
Let's start with the definition of what hero power is. In my opinion, this is a special type of card that conditionally always occupies the 11th slot in your hand and allows developers to show the features of a class or a specific strategy. The main distinguishing feature of this type of card is the hidden effect, which allows a player to return a card to their hand at the end of their turn.
We conventionally call this mechanic the boomerang effect. This is an exclusive component for hero powers, but luckily the game has several cards with similar effects that will allow us to determine its face value. With these examples we will show you the logic of our benchmark.
So the first card of this type appeared simultaneously with the game. Headcrack is a twin of Steady Shot, but to become a full copy of hero power, the player had to fulfill a condition. In beta, the card cost 2 mana. There is a certain pattern in Hearthstone. Damage deals exclusively to the opponent's hero who has a lower nominal value. This way you can do more damage for a lower cost. For example, Mind Blast deals 5 damage to the enemy hero for 2 mana. If players could choose any target, this spell, according to the basic level of the game, should cost 4 mana. If we follow this pattern, 2 damage to the opponent's hero should be equivalent to 0.8 mana crystals. Boomerang effect means that the card is returned to the hand. The nominal cost of the effect is 1 mana, which corresponds to drawing a card or adding a card through the generation effect. According to our benchmark, summing effects has an additional nominal cost of 1 mana crystal. Conditions for activating the effect are one of the ways to balance cards. The idea is that the card itself is weak, but in cases of activating the effect, it gains a big bonus. This directly affects the maximum and minimum value, since in some cases you will have to postpone using the card or will be forced to use it without an additional effect. So for 2 mana the minimum value is almost 1 mana crystal, and the maximum was almost 3 mana crystals. Most likely, when creating a card with conditions, the developers consider the possibility of getting the maximum and minimum benefits of 50%. If we determine the average value according to the proportion of 2 scenarios and divide the result by the actual mana cost of the card, then we see that utility ratio. This is the final test result. If it is 1, then the card fully corresponds to the basic standard of the game. The headcrack result is 0.9, which is an almost ideal basis.
But despite the perfect balance on paper, the card created problems as players managed to fulfill the condition almost 100% of the time, which turned the spell into a full-fledged hero power and was analogous to infinite resource generation. This was especially useful since resources were strictly limited during the classics. Thus, the utility ratio increased to 1.3, which means that the card was actually 30% more powerful than the base level. The developers were forced to apply a nerf and increase the cost, which had a negative impact on the likelihood of getting maximum value and reduced the utility ratio by 2 times. As a result, the card became twice as weak.
Here is another example. The legendary spell Infinitize the Maxitude is a generator of effects in a square. Initially, the card fully complied with the basic power. We estimated the effect of discover a card from a large pool at 1 mana crystal, with a conditional probability of activating boomerang effect of 50%. The utility ratio was 1. This is a terrible result for the current power level, even taking into account the fact that players receive the maximum value in most cases. The card failed to take a noticeable place in the metagame until the buff. After receiving additional characteristics, the spell became one of the most useful legendary tools ever created for the mage.
So we can conclude that the boomerang effect is analogous to resource generation and was originally extremely powerful. Based on the current power level, it is still relevant, but in itself is not as influential as before, since we have significantly more tools for drawing and generating. Now that we understand the nominal value of the boomerang effect, we can finally move on to hero powers. Let's start with the simplest one. We have already determined the face value of Steady Shot. It corresponds to the Headcrack spell, but does not force the player to fulfill the conditions and guarantees maximum benefit in any circumstances. The utility coefficient is 1.4. At the same time, the difficulty of obtaining maximum value is completely absent. This is an extremely impressive result, especially for classic Hearthstone. In modern circumstances, the power level of useful cards is at least 2. This means that modern cards are twice as strong as the base level.
Paladin's hero power allows you to summon a unit equivalent to Wisp. If the ideal stats for a 1 mana minion are 1/2 or 2/1, then a 1/1 minion would have a nominal value of 0.7 mana crystals. Add to that the boomerang effect and you get a maximum value that is equivalent to almost 3 mana crystals. But there is one drawback. Unlike the Hunter's ability, which can use Steady Shot in any circumstances, the Paladin will not be able to use his hero power in the rare case when his board is full. Such minor details also matter.
Totemic Call, as well as Paladin hero power, is a summoner, but has the most unpredictable consequences as it summons a random totem. In general, your totems are powerful but highly situational. Searing Totem is no different in usefulness than Wisp. Sometimes you need Stonic Totem as a defender, but you can get Healing Totem. In this case its usefulness is 0.
Healing Totem has been very useful in other scenarios as it extends the life of your creatures after trades. The most powerful but also the most situational is Wrath of Air Totem, which evolves your spells that deal damage. The benefit is especially great when combined with AoE. Wrath of Air Totem and Healing Totem have long-term action which allows them to generate effects for an infinite amount of time, which significantly increases their face value. But in most scenarios they are units that don't threaten the opponent and are useless. We are optimistic about the probability of getting maximum value, but the chances of getting 0 benefit are also high. In other cases you will get something in between. In the end, we assume that this ability is 25% better than basic standard. The plus sign at the end of the utility ratio means that the card has the potential to generate significantly more benefit.
Fire Blast, like many hero abilities, deals 1 damage, but this damage is unique because it is the most flexible and has the highest value. But there is one peculiarity. In classic Hearthstone, there was a clear pattern for spells that deal damage. The cost of a spell was traditionally 1 mana less than the damage dealt. Because of this, the nominal cost of 1 damage does not have a stable value and varies depending on the cost of the card and the amount of damage. So for 2 mana, Warlocks could use Dark Bomb, which dealt 3 damage, meaning 1 damage had a nominal value of almost 0.7 mana crystals. The effect is also equivalent to casting the Moonfire spell. Like the Hunter, the Mage can use his hero power at any time. But the main advantage remains the ability to finish off an enemy minion without losing your life points.
Even despite the negative consequences, Life Tap is one of the most frequently used hero powers. The ability to draw a card while losing 2 life points was too attractive in the days of Classic. The drawing effect has a nominal value of 1 mana crystal. As we have already found out, 2 damage to a hero is equivalent to less than 1 mana crystal, which is a compensating factor. Heroes have at least 30 life points, which can be a resource for gaining advantages. This means that in many cases you can ignore negative consequences, at least in matches in which you won, or in matches in which the hero's power did not affect your defeat. Moreover, in some archetypes, negative consequences themselves turn into advantages. The main flaw is the inability to use this hero power in circumstances where your life points are too low.
Even though Life Tap looks a little weaker on paper, it is one of the best abilities. The whole complexity of the game lies in minor nuances. Drawing a card is one of the most powerful effects in the game. If the power level of most cards has doubled over 10 years, then new cards with the draw effect usually have a reduced nominal value, which does not prevent them from remaining extremely useful. Unlike the Warlock, the Priest heals and does not cripple. Lesser Heal allows you to restore life to both the hero and creatures, but it is extremely difficult to determine the nominal value of the healing effect. It has been gradually declining over the past few years. For example, during the Classic era, it varied from 0.3 to 0.4 mana per 1 life point. In terms of benefits, dealing damage to the enemy hero has a little more conditional benefit compared to healing, since the healing effect is situational. For the effect to work, you must have the missing life points in the full amount of healing.
How often, playing for the Priest, did you have to skip the second turn or heal the opponent's face due to the inability to use your hero power? This is the main drawback, and for this reason we assume that at least 5% of the time you will get no benefit at all or half as much if you restore only 1 life instead of 2. An important advantage during the Classic era was the ability to heal your creatures, thereby extending their life and creating the opportunity to use them multiple times during trades. Unfortunately, in modern circumstances, this opportunity has dramatically lost its relevance.
The warrior has a very similar hero power and ideology, but unlike the priest, it is not flexible, since you cannot give armor to your creatures, but you can increase your life by 2 armor in any situation. For this reason, this ability received a little more points.
The math for Demon Claws is a bit complicated. Thanks to the Heroic Strike spell, we see that one attack that the hero can get is equivalent to half a mana. This pattern can be seen in other cards as well. 4 damage for 2 mana seems too strong, but the developers took into account that players will periodically be forced to damage enemy minions, which means they will receive damage in return. Thus, this hero power, like the Warlock's ability, has negative consequences that can be ignored in most of the matches. In the first scenario, let's say you deal damage to an opponent's minion and receive 3 damage in return, which is equivalent to a Sinister Strike spell. If you add the boomerang effect to this, your minimum benefit will be just over 1 mana crystal. You will only get maximum benefit if you deal damage to the enemy hero. Taking all factors into account, the potential utility index is more than 2. But there is one more nuance that needs to be clarified. Traditionally, 1 mana cards provide significantly more value for their cost than higher cost cards. We assume that this is done to make 1 mana cards competitive, since they offer less overall value than most 2 mana cards. This means that in the late game, the Demon Hunter will benefit less from his hero power compared to other abilities.
Druid's ability is something between the hero power of the warrior and the Demon Hunter, which means that negative consequences are present. The Claw spell clearly demonstrates that 1 mana cards have an increased power level since 1 attack and 1 armor by basic standards correspond to 1 mana crystal, but in real circumstances, the mathematics are different. Let's consider the same scenario as in the Demon Hunter. Suppose you attack a creature with 3 attacks in response. You will receive less damage due to armor, which means that negative consequences will be reduced. To get the maximum benefit, you must attack the opponent's face. In this case, you will additionally increase your life points. Since the attack to the opponent's hero has less nominal benefit, your maximum value will be 0.7 mana crystals plus the boomerang effect. But players often find themselves in a situation where the opponent is protected by a taunt, and attacking creatures is not rational. In this case, the player will only get 1 armor for 2 mana. As a result, the utility ratio is almost 1.3.
Dagger Mastery is another ability with negative consequences, but in addition to this, it has a partially delayed value. The developers suggested attacking the rogue twice, but not during the same turn. Let's consider this hero power in the same circumstances. The first time we attack a creature, we get 3 damage in return, just like the Demon Hunter. On the next turn, you can damage the opponent's hero, but you get less points for summing up these effects since the damage is delayed. This means that there is a chance that you will not be able to implement the second strike for various reasons. For example, there is always a chance that the opponent can destroy your weapon. The boomerang effect cannot be activated on every turn, which means it has a negative impact on the summation of this component. The minimum value is negative, We estimated the probability of getting it at 10%. Based on the results, the utility ratio is slightly more than 1.
This is the most problematic hero power that can bring advantages only if you attack the opponent's hero without hindrance or completely ignore the negative consequences, attacking the enemy's minions. In either case, the ability is significantly worse than the hunter hero power. Ghoul Charge is the newest hero power that can also deal 1 damage. In terms of usage scenario, it is a copy of Demon Hunter's ability but without the negative consequences and with a predictable result. Damage to a creature is equivalent to 0.6 mana, while to the opponent's hero it is 0.4, so on average half a mana crystal. In the vast majority of cases, Ghoul is not a full-fledged creature since he dies at the end of the turn, which means his body does not matter, but his corpse is important as a new type of resource in the game. This mechanic is equivalent to the effect of Body Bagger. The problem is that we are not sure that corpses have a nominal value. Corpses are a resource for improving some cards within a class, but cards that can improve under certain conditions are not something unique. Moreover, other classes have cards that can improve themselves without any resources, and there are a huge number of such tools. So we consider corpses to be just a new alternative way of creating game mechanics. In these calculations we have decided to completely ignore the benefit of obtaining a corpse, but this is a very controversial issue and we would like to know your opinion. Potentially, Ghoul can be targeted by a buff that creates unexpected damage for your opponent, but this combination is almost never used. As a result, we get not the worst but not the most impressive coefficient.
So let's move on to the results. According to the basic standards, the best hero power is Steady Shot. In second place is Armor Up.
Abilities with predictable consequences and a guaranteed implementation of the effect in full were at the top of the rating. In third place is the Warlock, of course if we assume that in most cases you can ignore the negative consequences. Also note that most hero powers are almost perfectly balanced despite different effects.
Demon Claws received more points, but this hero power does not fully reflect the standard for 1 mana cards. For this reason it went to the bottom of the list. The worst hero power is Dagger Mastery. Delayed value, plus the inability to effectively use the ability every turn played a decisive role. In second place from the bottom is Totemic Call. Shaman can potentially get much more advantages compared to other classes, but for this he needs a lot of luck. Ghoul Charge is also among the worst, but only if we assume that Corpse has no nominal value and is simply an alternative way to improve other effects.
I also decided to make my contribution and conducted my own research by making Hearthstone heroes fight each other using only their abilities. I captured the results in the picture. Yes, I am not the most talented artist and my work looks a little confusing, but if you figure it out, the image clearly shows the winners and losers. Pay attention to the green dots, they mean victory over the class to which the arrow leads. The red damage icon means defeat, while the yellow damage icon and blue arrow mean tie. The Warlock did not participate in the experiment because he kept killing himself. The Paladin got the most green dots. The cumulative effect of units allowed him to successfully resist most classes. In addition, he did not lose to any class but has 3 draws. In second place is the Warrior. He also got 6 wins but has 1 loss against the Paladin. In third place is the Druid with 5 wins and 4 ties. The Hunter, who got the most points in the benchmark, took 4th place because he lost the battle with the Paladin. It is not surprising that the Demon Hunter is the worst, but this is not a fair competition for him. In addition, the worst hero powers are the abilities for the Rogue and the Death Knight. These classes did not win even once. Shaman is also at the bottom because his hero power wins against 3 classes but loses against 6. The Mage's ability in this experiment was also extremely weak. Guys, can we finally sum it up and determine the worst and best hero powers?
We would slightly edit the results of our benchmark. First, we would make Warlock one of the leaders, since over the last 10 years the usefulness of the draw mechanic has not decreased compared to other effects. Perhaps we should even develop a separate coefficient for cards with the draw effect. Steady Shot and Armor Up still seem like some of the best to me.
We would also add the Priest to the list of worst hero powers, since the influence of the healing effect has decreased significantly recently, especially regarding the ability to heal creatures. A year ago, Blizzard tried to revive this ability by adding the overheal keyword, but at the moment they have not managed to achieve tangible changes. The most useless one in our opinion is the Rogue's hero power. Honestly, I don't understand why the developers ignore this. The shaman, as one of the losers, received at least a change in the totem pool. The priest's ability did not change, but a special mechanic was introduced that increased its value. The rogue has not had any synergies with hero power for a long time. Or perhaps we are mistaken because we do not see the hidden advantages of dagger mastery?
Dear viewers, we can't wait to hear your opinion about our ranking. Which hero power do you think is the best? Share with us your personal ranking of the top 3 worst hero powers for a class and the top 3 best. It will be extremely interesting to create a separate rating according to the opinion of the community. Share your thoughts in the comments and join the polls in the community tab.
Traditionally, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your help is invaluable. We will be grateful for any support.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.